Hello and welcome back. I'm so sorry. We just had a bit of a technical mishap and completely lost connection. So we'll just go back a little bit to what we were talking about. So I think we were talking about hormones. Is that right? Yeah. So we were talking about hormones and how that can affect your body at that time. So yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of labels out there and a lot of trans people who are, you know, maybe not having hormone replacement, or maybe they're experiencing domestic abuse. They've got like a lot of effects, all these other things going on as well. And obviously there's lots of things that could make people emotional or become angry. They might be struggling, or other people might be struggling with their their lifestyle, and it could be that people are rejecting them as well as in their life. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously they might sort of give that impression, but you don't know what's going on. It's very unfair for a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, there might be loads of people out there who aren't experiencing that love, that acceptance. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult for some. And obviously, there's lots of different people, not sort of just talk about transgender, but, they might be sort of going through the process, and, you've just got to encourage people, give them space. They're not, they're not just cross for no reason. They're going through the transition stage. So, as part of the sort of society, like social view, do you have sort of like membership to different societies, things? Well, I think at that time, there was me and one other transgender person I was friends with, and I was trying to think of my allies, and I thought, really, it's just me and that person. It was just us being able to talk to each other. We sort of say, oh, who else? And we always used to say, there must be others out there. There must be. But it was so difficult to imagine at that time. So I've actually set up a Facebook page called Deaf Transgender World. And that was back in 2018, so it was just us two. And we started to invite some other gay friends who maybe knew other transgender people who would join, and then we'd be able to talk to each other and make various different connections about who we knew, and it suddenly became like a very big community. I think there's about 841 members now. So I think about 300 or 400 are deaf transgender, and that's throughout the world now, which is brilliant. Wow, I mean, that's much higher than I expected. So deaf and transgender, I thought maybe that was like, 40, 45, but to say, wow, that's, 800, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it might be, men who want to become women or women who want to become men. It says transgender at the top, but really it's sort of like an umbrella term for any people who are struggling with their gender identity. So, I mean, really, there's so many different identities out there, so I'm not going to try and name them all, so don't ask me because I'd never remember. I don't even think we've got time, we go on and on and on. We've only got an hour. I think, most people sort of say 38 different identities, and some people say there's up to 70. So, wow. So at that time, that kind of basic, set up for people to join, if they're sort of having difficulties with stress, or maybe they're facing a lot of barriers in the deaf world. Is that why you set that up? Yeah, I mean, partly I just felt there was a sort of responsibility. I felt very, very privileged because we live in England. We've got law in place to protect transgender people, and I think I can so empathise with other people in different parts of the world who don't have that law. They don't have that protection. And, I really wonder how deaf people in that community feel as well in different countries, but a lot of people don't see that. They take the NHS for granted, really. They don't see how lucky they are, and if you compare to other countries with, other people don't have the NHS. And so, I wonder how other people are getting through that journey without that support. So I feel like a little bit responsible, really, for the transgender community have given me the nickname like Mother Hen, so I'm looking out for people. And I think sometimes, I feel like I'm a little bit exhausted, feel like, it's so difficult, but having that community there we use international sign, we can communicate, help each other. And really, that's basic counselling there, because there's no, other counselling in different places in the world. So that is that provision right there. So obviously, other countries not having that recognition for transgender, or, maybe in America they might have some sort of advances, but do you feel like you wanted to sort of project that support around the world? Is that right? So how can we support these people through that process if there's not that law in place? Could you just explain that? What do you mean? So for example, if you're in other countries, maybe they don't recognise transgender people, but they want to go through the process. How do you... So, for example, like with passports, do they get recognised? Things like that. That's a really good question, because obviously here in England we have passports, so we can sort of protect ourselves so that you can change your name, and that's all fine. But in other countries in the world, you can't change your name on your passport. So there's one in the transgender group that I set up, and there's people all over the world in that, but I've not actually met with them face to face. So it would be lovely to meet some of them and have, find some of their difficulties. Some of them, they can't change their name on their passport, and maybe their appearance has changed, but it means they can't fly out anywhere because they look different to their passport. And it might also be that their language barrier as well, if they don't have people to help them. So having that connection outside the country is really important. Oh wow, that must be really difficult, like feeling completely helpless. Yeah, I mean, I've had definitely one or two, like a few people messaging me saying, please help, I need to get out, I need to see my family, or, and I really struggle with that because I have to remind myself, it's not possible to help everybody. So hopefully, I've sort of decided I'd write a book, and hopefully through that I can get out to more people and help to provide a little bit of support. But obviously it is in English, but I'm hoping that maybe we could get that translated. And on the book at the back we've got a QR code, so it could be that somebody could scan it and translate it in sign language. I mean, that's my dream, really. That's ideal. So when is that book launching? It's in July. Yeah, the end of July it will be out. It should have been in last October, but obviously because of coronavirus, everything's been delayed. So, wow. So, I mean, how many languages do you think the book will be translated into? So, it's in English. Obviously, that's the first language. And then hopefully it will be launched through the Commonwealth, so into different languages there. And then that'll be about 25 languages. But I'd love to translate it more, but obviously that's a lot of effort, but we're going to try and get it translated as much as possible. Wow, so that's not only going out in Britain, but for the rest of the world as well. That's fantastic. Yeah, and I mean in BSL, but also in international sign language. So I'm looking for people currently who can translate into international sign language. So anybody who's watching, if you're signing international, make sure you're letting us know. Wow, that's brilliant. So let's have a look if we've got at the next photo. So what's happening there? Oh, this photo. Yes, I do remember this one. Yeah, we're all being the Spice Girls. So what about the next photo that we've got? Have we got another photo? Oh, we always go to that gig. I love it, and we can go out with a group of friends. Yeah, I've been to a fantastic one recently. Where was it? I can't remember. And one of the Olympic performances, the performers were sort of opening the gig that I went to, and I was so thrilled. I didn't go and say hello, but she was right, they were right there. So anyway, have we got the next photo we can have a look at? So who's that? That's me and my new partner. So how long have you been together? Oh, we've been together 1 year in June. So we met just as I finished writing the book. I'd spent 3 years and I'd going through all the journey and I'd accomplished that. So, I mean, the book was a lot about my struggles, you know, the struggles with being a man and struggles with men as well. And I closed the book and I thought, right, that's it, that's finished. And we did some editing and there was like 15 things that were like throwaway lines about emotional, you know, or I'd stopped myself because I felt like I couldn't write anymore because I'd become too emotional. And the editor said, well, no, you need to expand on that actually. So I had to keep expanding. And then by the end of it, I'd finished. And I felt like, wow, but, you know, that's it. I've closed the book on that. It was very literal for me. So the book itself, how did you start writing that? How, you know, tell us about that. Well, I think it started a lot of the deaf community were getting in touch and sort of asking about my story. And if we go back again a little bit further, we'll go back to the start. The deaf community have been lovely, you know, lots are very, very interested in my story and, you know, changing the name. And I felt like I was telling my story a lot. It felt very repetitive, if I'm honest. You know, you'd sign it once, then the crowd would grow and you'd have to repeat certain bits. And it felt, you know, sometimes I couldn't be bothered to explain. It feels like a very long journey for me. And so the best way would just be put it in a book. There you go. It's all done. If somebody wants to know my life story, where I've been, how the journey was, where I started and where it ended, it's right there. You know, and hopefully it'll be translated into BSL as well. And they can watch it and they can feel that connection in that way. You know, there's a lot of books out there, yes, but you know, there's sort of novels or there's a little bit of fiction in it, but I really wanted something that somebody could really relate to. And, you know, for the audience to feel that is what it's actually like to go through that process, for them to feel the highs and the lows with me.
So from the very start of putting pen to paper, how long was it then? 3 years? Yes, it was 3 years in total. I needed 15,000 words, and then with the editing we added a few more bits to it. So yes, it was 15 words to start with, but by the end it was 33,000 words because I'd left out all the emotional issues. So when you started to go through the process of letting everything out, that must have been really hard for you. It was really emotional. There were lots of tears, lots of ups and downs that went with it. But my friends were very supportive, really proud of me, saying, you've got this, you can do this. But I was studying at university at the same time. I was editing and I was counselling and doing university all at the same time. It was a real juggling act. Having to go through it all again, I kind of think that's why I wish I'd had counselling at the start. So when you created the book, was that a realisation for you that you had needed counselling? Yeah, it was, because I felt so much better once I got it out and put it into the book, to finally finalise what it is, to be completely raw with my feelings, to open the wounds that I had tried to close. And yeah, it was really upsetting to put it all there, but I'm so pleased that I did it. Oh gosh, that's really emotional. And to have your boyfriend supporting you as well through the process, that's so lovely to get through that part of the journey now. Some people do say, when they've had counselling, that you should put it down on paper. Yeah, and some counsellors say that as well, don't they, to keep a journal. What was the moment in the book that really impacted you? I think the main impact was my acceptance of myself. That we all want to be accepted, we all want to be loved. So why is it so difficult? I think there's so much stigmatisation out there of, you know, if I'm going to deaf events, you know, I can't guarantee necessarily that the people aren't going to talk about me, you know, say that person over there, they're trans, and to have eyes on me, you know. I think if it was a hearing person, they wouldn't pick it up because it would be too far for them to hear it. But with a deaf person, you see it in signing, and you can see that people are talking about you. But I'm luckily got a very thick skin, so I've got over it. I feel it must hurt though when you see people talking about you. You know, it's so sensitive because you are a human. There's no need for them to talk to you about that. Well, I don't understand why people feel the need to do it. That's what hurts the most. That's what I find most difficult. I'm sorry to hear that you've been through that. Can you advise people in the audience of what to do and not do? Maybe that would help. Well, let's start with what you should do. I think what you should do, the best thing is to just say nothing negative. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Yeah, I completely agree. You know, just leave people to themselves, to their own business. Because that can affect people. You can hurt people. So just keep your opinions to yourself. I think that's the best thing to do. Things to not do is to say, oh, she was a man, or she was this, or she was that. You know, the past is the past, you know. Yeah, it's a case of dragging the past into the current, and that must be so repetitive for you and exhausting. Yeah, I think so, because the deaf community don't realise saying she was a man, she's transgender, is actually a hate crime. Some people in the community don't realise actually what a hate crime is, that we need more education on that. So a lot of deaf people often think, oh, sorry, I didn't mean it. Other thing is people saying, well, you don't look like a man. I never want to look like a man anyway, so why would you say that? But again, it's education. I don't believe it's their fault. I believe it's just a poor education and they need better education at school. That's where it's important to start these conversations.
So obviously sometimes it can be really difficult because you know, to sort of stand up and say things like that, just to be blunt, you know, without hurting other people. You know, you've got to think about them, you've got to think about their feelings. So obviously that's really, really difficult. So if anybody is calling through, then obviously feel